Nikakaa. Nikaona macho yani haioni kitu.
Killer brew in 5 counties, 63 dead and scores fighting for their lives.
Wanajipata ukiamka asubuhi unaona kama huna future.
He lived to tell the tale, a first-hand account of an illicit brew survivor.
Plus, lots of promises for the terror victims. But where is the money?
Also on KTN Prime, deadly land row. Security guards pay the ultimate price.
This is KTN Prime with Yvonne Okwara and Wilson Buru.
Good evening. Tonight, the country is coming to terms with yet another avoidable tragedy: death from the consumption of illicit alcohol.
Now, in the last 24 hours, at least 63 people in 5 counties have lost their lives after consuming what we now know was a combination of drinks laced with lethal substances.
From Embu to Makueni, Kiambu to Kitui and Murang'a, families are now mourning the death of breadwinners drawn into cheap but ultimately deadly brews.
We have lined up for you a detailed coverage of this tragedy that has rekindled memories of similar and equally devastating incidences in the past few years.
Just who is to blame for the seemingly endless trail of death from illicit liquor? Our special coverage, Sip of Death, now begins.
This is a tragedy like few others in the recent past. 63 lives lost in a space of 24 hours to illicit alcohol. Government officials suspect that the lethal drinks distributed to 5 counties may have come from the same source.
Here now are the numbers as they stand at this hour. Embu County, where it all started, has the highest death toll, standing at 24 by the time we came on air. In Makueni, the number so far is 18, while 10 lives have been lost in Limuru, Kiambu County. Murang'a County has the least, that death toll standing at 2.
Our Central Kenya reporter Karen Derry begins our coverage of that tragedy.
At first glance, it is difficult to tell that 38-year-old Silas Njiro cannot see us as he is wheeled to Ward 2 of the Embu General Hospital. This is where victims of the toxic brew dubbed Kosovo have been admitted. Silas Njiro's wife, Julia Mudhoni, is fighting to hold back her tears. Her husband, their sole breadwinner, has lost his eyesight.
Bibi yangu akakuja nikamwambia kwani ni saa ngapi? Akakuja kaniambia saa 1 inaenda kufika unusu. Nikaenda kuchungulia sana nikaona sioni kitu. Watoto wote walienda shule. Hai. Kazindo kwani uliendaje?
The revelation that this father of 2 can no longer see has shattered his world. Njiro vehemently vows never to visit a Changaden again now that he has escaped death by a whisker. He has seen many of his friends at the Sharia Slum lose their lives.
Aka Mungu hapo hata hiyo njia hiyo siwezi pitia hiyo.
Inside Ward 2, where the other victims lie receiving treatment, we meet up with 31-year-old George Gashie. And like Njiro, he too cannot see. On his side is his 26-year-old wife, Susan Karemi, with whom they were drinking together.
Ananiambia aoni lakini ananiambia ni kidogo. Sasa anashangaa aoni na tulikunywa naye na mbona mimi naona.
Still in the same ward is 27-year-old David Muredhi, who was also drinking with his 32-year-old wife, Anne Wawera. Sadly, his wife passed on yesterday, having imbibed too much of the brew, while he had only taken a glass and a half worth 75 shillings.
Kwanza alipotea macho, akaacha kuona, akaniambia aoni kitu. Kumshikilia hapa, akaniangalia, akaniuza-uza. Akaniuliza ni wewe bwanangu, nikamwambia kumleta hapa atakuka. Akaenda.
According to the Embu General Hospital's medical superintendent, Dr. Gerard Nderito, the official death toll from the Embu brew is 24. It is at this very base that the victims had come to indulge, not knowing what would befall them or indeed the repercussions of their indulgence. The drinking den at the Shauri Slum is deserted. It is here that they sat enjoying their drink, unaware that moments later, 58 of them would be admitted at the Embu hospital, 24 others dead. An impromptu Nyumba Kumi meeting held at the Shauri Slum where the incident occurred had Embu Deputy Governor Dorothy Nditi and the Kirimari Member of County Assembly Ibrahim Swaleh in attendance. Questions abound as to how this could have happened. Angry members of the public expressed their sentiments, lashing out at security personnel for allegedly abetting the crime.
Hizi pombe haramu zinauzwa huku hazinanga license. License ni 100 na 250. Kama wewe ni commissioner, tosheka na mshahara wako.
The county commissioner, Amos Gedesha, has sent the area chief and his assistant on compulsory leave.
As a county assembly, we are moving fast and coming up with an alcoholic bill so that can be able to cover what is happening.
I don't think this is a time for blame game, but certainly there is a problem. And it is for that reason that we are here to address that problem.
In total, more than 59 people have lost their lives in less than 24 hours in 5 different counties, all from illicit brew. In Makueni, 14 people have been reported dead, while in Limuru, 10 people have lost their lives. 9 others have died in Kitui, and 2 deaths have been reported in Murang'a County.
Hakuna haja ya kuwa na watu kama hawa ambao hawashughuliki na afya za watu. Na kada lazima ije na iweko katika kila pahali, si mtudho. Na kada, mtudho ni mtu mmoja tu. Na kada inatumia bilioni 1 kwa mwaka kwa sababu ya hizi kampeni. Na mbona sasa hatujapatikana hapa, hatukuwa tumetangaza haya maneno ili tuweze kuwashauri serikali. Kwa hivyo msafara ya wale wanaondoka ni wengi.
Families of the affected want the government to take responsibility and cater for the cost of the burial as they failed in their watchdog duty. Carol Nderi for KTN in Embu County.
Now, this tragedy comes in the wake of a warning by President Uhuru Kenyatta that he would sack all or any chief who would have any illicit brew found in his backyard. And tonight on the BQ, we are asking our chiefs to blame for the illicit brew tragedy. Our chiefs to blame for the illicit brew tragedy.
Please engage with us on our hashtag on our Twitter handle. That's at Wilson_Bull. The hashtag tonight is Sip of Death.
Well, and tonight we have Nancy Kachungira, and she's going to take us through the history of this illicit brew tragedy. Absolutely.
How did we get to where we are today? Well, let's take a look. We'll have to actually go back to colonial times. If we look back at pre-colonial times, actually, Africans were not allowed to drink bottled beer. That's correct. This was actually a preserve for the colonial masters. And because of this, they were only allowed to imbibe, local brews. But even this was only allowed for ceremonial reasons. But in 1952, now that's a year we need to remember, there was a state of emergency that was declared. And with that came a total ban on even the ceremonial drinks that were allowed. What did this mean? Well, if you remember what happened in the American Prohibition of 1919, it's pretty much the same story. What happened is the manufacture of brew went underground. People started to brew and take the drinks in a very clandestine manner, which is very similar to what we're seeing still happening today because these brews were outlawed. So you have this situation where this brewing has gone underground. People are doing it in a very clandestine manner because it is not allowed lawfully. Let's go to 1963. Year of independence, of liberation, and indeed, to a small extent, the liberation of this trade. The ban was relaxed slightly, although the Chiefs Act still did outlaw it and regulate it severely. However, the making of local brew did flourish, and the government did not legalize it. Now, we can compare this to the situation in Tanzania and Uganda, where I'm sure you've heard of konyagi and waraji. The genesis of that was actually local brew. So in those cases, it was to some extent legalized, but not in Kenya. Now, this trade continued to flourish. And if we get to the 1970s, we find out that the brewers had to develop a more sophisticated way of doing their business because the local brew took almost days in some instances to brew. And during this time, the police could easily find out what they were doing and, of course, descend upon them and ask for bribes. So they had to change their tactics. And they decided to develop some brews that took much less time to make, but the trade-off, they became much more dangerous. All sorts of things started to go into those brews. And fast forward to 1996, people had been dying, but in 1996, the nation woke up because this is the year that over 20 people were killed in Muranga because of a brew that was laced with methanol. Very dangerous, very deadly. This is when the nation sat up and said, something must be done. Now, this also is where the blame game began. The police were blamed by the Kenyans. The police, in turn, blamed the judiciary for letting people out with small fines, even on bail. And then this trade also became more like an organized crime because the kind of people participating in it were no longer small fish. You had big people involved in this trade, and people continued to die. You might remember Mai Mahiu and Narok. More than 80 people died. You might remember a clip where someone was caught saying, "Ata mkizima ta, tutaendelea kunywa." That was the case. Also, back in 2000, you'll remember the Kumi Kumi incident. More than 140 lives lost in Nairobi. And fast forward to today, more than 320 people have died from drinking illicit brew since then. And that is excluding the over 60 who have died in this latest incident. So it's obviously a massive problem. And when this is discussed, some of the suggestions that are put forward, obviously, are maybe reducing the price of some branded types of alcohol so that people do not have to resort to illicit brew, or even regulating it, making it a bit more of a more formal arrangement so that people don't have to do this in a clandestine manner. However, some people say that this may actually increase alcohol intake, especially seeing as Africa is at the top of the ratings for binge drinking at 25%. So there are a lot of concerns that this could actually make the whole alcohol situation worse. Whichever way you look at it, we do have an alcohol problem. And I think, Yvonne and Wilson, that's one of the things we're asking about today. You know, the president did say that the buck stops with the chiefs. So are the chiefs to blame? Or are we looking at the people who do go into these dens and, you know, drink this brew and say, well, that is not something that you should do? So that's where the question is.
It is time for authorities to take a step, isn't it?
Well, that's one way to look at it, definitely.
Absolutely. And it's now 3 years. But to Alex Jenga, the memories that are so clear, it could have happened yesterday. Alex lived to tell the tale when several other people died when they consumed the Kumi Kumi brew in Banana. KTN's Wilkis Tanyabwa caught up with him as he followed the news of the latest deaths of illicit alcohol.
Alex Njenga's hands beat a nervous tattoo as he reveals a difficult truth. Every day for the rest of his life, he will have to struggle so as not to succumb to the call of alcohol. Njenga is a recovering alcoholic who survived an incident in 2011 that saw 15 of the friends he had been drinking Kumi Kumi with die. He and 10 others survived to tell the tale. Banana is a little shopping center in Kiambu. Drinking dens have sprung up on every corner, and young people here are living life on the first lane, just like Njenga did until that fateful day. A casual laborer, he left his place of work in Nairobi, and with his money burning a hole in his pocket, he went straight to the club.
Ingia kwa vilabu hivi, kugotea mabeste. Hapale hivi tukaanza kushia tenye nilikuwa nacho.
That is the last thing he remembers. He woke up in a hospital bed.
Kuna pombe yenye tulikunywa ilikuwa sijui na sumu.
And though it did not immediately seem like it, Njenga was among the lucky few. 15 others died that day. That incident proved a turning point for Njenga. He joined a community group that meets once a week and proudly tells us that he has been sober for 3 years. But his success is colored with the knowledge that in his home area, locals live in fear that every day will bring news of yet another alcohol-induced death.
Detu kubwa. Yani ni vile tu yani unajipata yani wewe ulisoma, hujaipata wax mahali, miaka imeenda, si unaona? Na kuwa tu ni stress. Unajipata ukiamka asubuhi unaona kama huna future. Ni kweli naona hasa ikiwa tutakuwa wa kutegemewa. Hasa wakati utakaokuja. Basi mimi naona kama kutai kucha.
The news of the 9 who died after drinking illicit brew in his home area hits close to home. It is a reminder of where he might have ended up had things gone differently. But he says, painful though the lesson was, it has made him more grateful for the gift of life.
Let's take you now to a different kind of tragedy right here in Nairobi, where police now believe a group of about 30 men were behind the attack of 5 people within Ngara area last night. The incident, believed to be land-related, left 3 security guards dead and 2 others seriously injured. Ian Wafula has more.
Acting on a tip-off, Starehe police station officers discovered 3 bodies in Ngara area. This was on the plain fields of a piece of land whose owner was unidentified, and one was found inside Moranga Secondary School. 2 other people were rushed to the Kenyatta National Hospital and Guru Nanak with critical injuries. Police would later establish that the murders were linked. 4 brand new machetes with blood stains were discovered just within the radius of the crime scenes.
Information we have received is that the number of attackers or assailants, if you like, was about 30. About 30.
It is believed that the victims were night guards who are watching over the piece of land and construction tools inside this building.
That one person or another could have been able to see these people maybe alight from a vehicle. If somebody saw the vehicle and maybe took the registration, please let us have that. That will assist us in these investigations very, very much.
The bodies were taken to the city mortuary as investigations into the case continue. Ian Wafula, KTN.
Let's give you an update now on the ongoing threat of terrorism. And police in Mombasa have arrested 2 suspects linked to the improvised explosive devices recovered in that city on Saturday.
That's right. Police in the coastal city maintain that 2 people who died at the Mwembe Tayari explosion may have been part of those who orchestrated the attack. Sharon Momanyi reports.
Even as families of Suleiman Mohammed Said and Jamal Mohammed Awad, who died in the Mwembe Tayari blast on Sunday, deny that the 2 were terrorists, as alleged by police on Sunday.
Vipi leo atasingiziwa kuwa kwani mambo ya msikiti Musa alikuwa unanaomba waniombe msamaha.
Police maintain that they have sufficient evidence implicating the 2 deceased suspects.
We are working on those evidences. We can avail to you if you want, because we have the names. Prisons have the names, we have the photographs.
Mombasa CID boss Henry Ondiek said that Suleiman and Jamal were arrested when police stormed the Masjid Musa Mosque to end an outlawed jihadist convention earlier this year, only for them to be later released.
He was one of those whom we had charged regarding the attendance of that jihad sensitization.
Police termed Suleiman Said as a hardline criminal who was serving a death sentence but was released from prison. According to police, the 2 suspects were also friends.
No single parent would say that his child is a criminal.
And still in Mombasa, police have arrested 2 suspects in connection with the Saturday explosion at the Nyali Reef Beach Hotel. The 2 are said to have booked themselves at the hotel before the incident and are currently helping police with investigations.
We have certain evidences on them that tend to raise more questions than answers.
The police say the two devices used in Saturday's explosions could have been assembled by one person. Mombasa County Governor Ali Hassan Joho has expressed concerns that the terrorist attacks in the county continue to threaten its development.
Though we know it is an absolute preserve of the national government, but we shall play our part. We want the society as well to play their part.
Meanwhile, 2 drivers and 3 conductors were charged in connection with the Sunday blast at Thika Road that saw 4 people killed. The 5 were charged for failing to carry out proper screening of the passengers before they boarded their buses. The suspects, who were arraigned before the Bakadara courts, however, denied the charges and were each released on a bond of 5 million shillings and 2 sureties of the same amount. Sharon Momanyi, KTN.
Here in Nairobi, security experts are now calling for a review of the country's anti-terror laws to curb the current upsurge. The analysts are worried that the Prevention of Terrorism Act 2012, for instance, allows for bail for terror suspects. And as Rita Tinina reports, the judiciary itself is also on the spot.
With the ever-increasing threat of terror, the perfect formula to deal with the country's biggest security challenge has remained elusive. The executive is now turning the heat on the judiciary.
We call on our judiciary to be a strong partner in the war against terror.
But experts argue the debate on the judiciary and the fight against terror should begin with legislation.
2012, whatever we legislated has quickly been overtaken by time. Terrorism changes face quickly, and so our laws must be made to change quickly.
Kenya passed the Prevention of Terrorism Act in 2012. Section 31 of the Act gives police officers the power to arrest terror suspects. The Act also stipulates that a suspect shall not be held for more than 24 hours unless they are produced before a court and the court orders that they be remanded in custody, or the 24 hours end outside ordinary court hours. But it is the provision of bail to suspects that is of concern to experts.
So we can arrest anyone, genuine or not, rush them to court, their lawyer shows up, proves why they must be allowed to be out on bail.
The issue of bail has been a sticking point for human rights activists, and to experts, the country may need to find the perfect balance in the fight against terror.
We should now see how far the Bill of Rights applies to perpetrators of terrorism, or what rights might we need to deny them, and staying within the confines of law, really.
Experts say the country needs to review what they term as gaps in the terrorism law.
It's a capital offense for you to commit armed robbery, but terrorism, that we know is worse than armed robbery, is still not a capital offense.
With a spotlight on the judiciary, Mbijiwe says the third arm of government needs a strong law to work with.
The judge does not give a damn ear to the threats that comes from the executive. The burden of proof and the measures we put around creating a burden of proof is what now we should come in and legislate as law.
For now, the judiciary is still awaiting response from the executive to an invite sent out on the 28th of last month by the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary to the Interior Principal Secretary Mutea Iringo. They were calling for a meeting with the National Security Council, with the exception of the President and Deputy President, to discuss the challenges on national security. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Now, the Deputy President announced that the Westgate Fund will be used to pay medical bills for victims of Sunday's Thika Road blasts. His statement, however, ignited a debate that the government has ignored for years. KTN's Asha Mwulu reports on the compensation of terror victims.
There's been more than 80 attacks on Kenyan soil since 2011. At least 150 people have been killed, more than 560 injured. As the numbers keep rising, those affected are eventually forgotten, and in the end, they become just a part of the statistics.
That was in my thought.
But for those like 23-year-old Caroline Wanjiru, memories of these attacks are etched deep in their bodies.
2 years ago, she was among the victims of yet another blast. In a split of a second, the assonance blast had changed her life forever.
Burns 78%. Inhaling, it was 10%. And the broken limb, 2 bones, they broke, so it was into 2 pieces.
Politicians rushed to her hospital ward. The top presidential candidates then, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, were there with promises of compensation. Her immediate medical bills were covered, but as soon as she was discharged, she was on her own.
These people of government, no one come here to see how I'm moving on. Yet, I was not stealing. I was not doing anything bad. But I was trying to make my life better. That person got me into my working place. Yet government is doing nothing, especially to these innocent people and children.
Mercy Mogambo from Mombasa knows this tale all too well. The 2002 Kikambala bombing left her unable to stand, leave alone walk.
3 iliganywa, wale walikuwa wameumia waliganywa 50,000 na wale walikuwa wamefelewa waliganywa 100,000. Hizo peke yake, lakini sijaona msaada mwingine kabisa kutokea kwa serikali.
The irony, however, is that the Prevention of Terrorism Act enacted in 2012 gave victims of terror attacks something to hope for after a tragedy. The act provides for a compensation of victims of terrorism fund to be used for the livelihoods of those affected. It gives the government the mandate to seize property of persons found guilty of terrorism and to use the proceeds to boost this fund.
I will be frank with you. I'm in security sector. I've never heard to this day that the Victim Compensation Fund has been established. If it had, Baby Osinya right now should have all his future assured with a compensation, full compensation.
As more Kenyans join the growing list of terror victims, the government remains tight-lipped on compensating them. And for survivors like Caroline, the long journey ahead is one that she's now forced to walk alone. Ashimwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
Tonight, over 60 people are dead in 5 counties after taking illicit brews, and this tragedy comes in the wake of a warning by President Uhuru Kenyatta that he would fire any chiefs in whose jurisdiction any illicit brews were found. Now, tonight on the BQ, we're asking, are chiefs to blame for the illicit brew tragedy? Are chiefs to blame for the illicit brew tragedy?
Tell us your thoughts on Twitter at KTN Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara, at Wilson_Mburu. Sip of Death is our hashtag tonight. You can also engage us on our SMS line. The number is 22155. Please start with a yes or no, followed by your brief comment. And also leave us your name and your location. We'd love to know where you are watching us from. We will sample your views and give you the poll result at the end of this live newscast.
Take a short break now, but don't you go too far. We have much more after that. Stark choices for Endgame Somalia. Just what are Kenya's options?
Thank you for staying with us. You're watching KTN Prime.
Now, the Parliamentary Committee on National Security has now issued a 2-week ultimatum to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Joseph Olelenku, to come up with strategies to curb terror attacks in the country.
The committee says it is prepared to ask those in charge, including the Cabinet Secretary, to resign. The committee says Kenyans are increasingly losing confidence in the government's ability to offer security to its citizens. The members have, however, thrown their weight behind the government's resolve to have the Kenya Defence Forces remain in Somalia.
Yes, the permanent secretary, the principal secretary, the inspector general, the 2 deputies. We want to see a lot of improvement, and we are giving them 2 weeks to actually come up with superior tactics on how to deal with terrorism.
Let's take politics out of these security matters. Even the Americans were hit. Even the British were hit in their own cities. It's not something that is unique to Kenya. But we must be vigilant and fight back. I think our troops are doing a very good work.
Right, and it's now time to talk business, and Bonnie Tunya is in our business studio tonight, and he is updating us on the latest, including matters wage bill.
That's right, Yvonne, and one of the proposals is that people will be asked to retire early as a measure to cut the wage bill. I have the details. My name is Bonnie Tunya. This is business. Capping the wage bill to GDP at a comfortable ratio and reducing the retirement age are some of the recommendations by the Sarah Serem-led commission in taming Kenya's rising wage bill. Here's KTN's Adelaide Changole with the rest of that report.
After weeks of collecting views from Kenyans across the 47 counties, the Salaries and Remuneration Commission finally has a way forward, which they say will be key in reducing the current wage bill.
But we want that reversed, and the culture of Kenya be that the leaders that are serving in this country are the servants, and the Wanjiko that pays the tax is the master.
From its public forums across the country, the Commission says Kenyans wanted the retirement age reduced from 60 years to 55 years, and a maximum percentage set for wages and salaries in relation to the country's GDP. The Commission is also calling for an audit of the civil service to weed out ghost workers and to reclassify all government employees into logical job groups. Additionally, revenue collection agencies must maximize tax collection and seal all leakages and wastage of taxpayer funds.
To close out on all the wastages, then we know that our revenues will be enhanced. And if revenues are enhanced, therefore the issues of wage bill sustainability will be a thing of the past.
The combination of rising salaries and allowances has seen the public sector wage bill surge past the recommended 7% of GDP to the current 12%.
The moment your wage bill to GDP ratio is out of normal, your ability to develop is zero. Because you develop from what you call the savings of your taxation.
This has forced the government to turn to expensive debt to fund major infrastructural projects, which has in turn led to higher taxes and cost of living for the average Kenyan.
What you are paid as a gross pay actually compensates you for the job that you do, and therefore you do not have to get any additional incentive.
Adelaide Changole, KTN Business.
Kenya's dairy sector is headed for a slowdown as farmers earnings slow while processors hold stocks. Here's more.
In the last few months, the dairy sector has been faced by challenges, especially farmers who have had to contend with low farm gate prices. Processors too have had a challenge with an excess of 2 billion shillings worth of milk staying in their coolers following misprediction on the weather patterns.
The net effect has been that the prices of the farmer payments have actually dropped. They have dropped appreciably up to about 30%.
With the favorable weather conditions, dairy farmers are currently producing an estimated 45 million liters of milk monthly.
The processors bought a lot of milk from the farmers and the accumulated stocks of powder and UHT in preparation for the dry months of January, February, and March.
However, farmers are not realizing value for their production following a reduction in prices at farm gate by processors. New KCC reduced its prices per litre to 32 shillings from a previous 40 shillings, while market leader Brookside Dairies effected a 5 shilling drop to a maximum of 30 shillings per litre of milk buying from farmers. The sector is also feeling a pinch from the increased sale of imported milk from neighboring Uganda in parts of Western Kenya and North Rift.
And because of the East African Common Protocol, the trade of milk and other agricultural products across the borders is free. So you cannot control milk coming out from Uganda to Kenya.
The dairy sector is also calling on the government to exempt dairy inputs from the 16% VAT and instead place a 6% concessional rate that would allow farmers to earn more from their investments. Philip Ketan, KTN Business.
The European Union has pledged 3.4 billion shillings to fund various projects across the country, including those in the livestock subsector. This is said to be part of a wider strategy to develop agriculture and increase food production through research, improving efficiencies in farming, and also supporting critical sectors of coffee and sugar. While celebrating the 50-year-long partnership with the African Union, the EU noted the need for continued support of livestock and agriculture in order to achieve food security in Africa.
Thank you very much.
We've also made it quite clear that where products face supply-side constraints entering the European Union market, that we will try to develop a program to explain this.
Trade between Kenya and Nigeria is set to increase after the two countries signed agreements to solidify their cooperation. Now, this comes on the back of a 3-day state visit by President Uhuru Kenyatta meant to deepen trading relations with Africa's largest economy. KTN's Michael Karanja has more.
Trade between Kenya and Nigeria has never been something to write home about. The same can be said about the level of investment businessmen from both countries have made in either country. The main challenge has been the lack of proper structures that enable trade to thrive, not to mention the endless tariff and non-tariff barriers. So far, trade has been in Kenya's favor with an average of 1.2 billion shillings in exports to Nigeria compared to an average of 109 million shillings in imports from Nigeria. But all that is set to change following the signing of 3 agreements and 4 memoranda of understanding between the two governments that are aimed at promoting trade.
And we have no doubt that within the 4 years that we had set ourselves, we'll see the trade flows between the two countries doubling and the level of investment going up by over 50%.
As indeed we said today, we would like to see a growing partnership between Kenyan business and Nigerian business, where we partner to provide the key anchor which will help us develop this great continent.
The agreements were on trade and agricultural cooperation as well as on immigration matters and seek to ease the movement of people between Kenya and Nigeria. For starters, prominent Nigerian businessmen will get a 5-year extended visa that will allow them to move freely when crisscrossing to seal business deals.
Kenya and Nigeria must leverage our comparative advantages in these areas of agro-businesses, tourism, oil and gas, among others.
One of the most crucial business deals signed so far has to be the $400 million investment by Africa's wealthiest man, Aliko Dangote, to set up a cement plant in Kenya. Dangote co-chairs the Kenya-Nigeria Trade and Investment Council with Equity Bank CEO James Mwangi, who is among the team of businessmen who accompanied the president to Nigeria. Equity Bank is said to be eyeing the lucrative Nigerian market to set up its first West African operation. Brookside Dairy is also keen on Nigeria as a potential market for milk exports. Michael Karanja, KTN Business.
Taking a lot of big money there, but from West Africa is where we wind up business. Let's take a look at how your money is working for you with a look at the financial market report coming up next.
KTN Business in association with
Safaricom, Lipa na M-Pesa.
Shop 500 shillings at any Uchumi outlet. Pay via Lipa na M-Pesa. Win 104 raffles. Right,
and as markets closed, Standard Group was the biggest gainer, moving up 10 points to a stable price of 33 shillings. I have more numbers tomorrow. Back to Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Bonnie Tunya, for that. Let's give you a recap tonight of our top story. Tragedy hits yet again, like few others in the recent past. 63 lives lost in the space of just 24 hours to illicit alcohol. Government officials suspect that the lethal drinks distributed to 5 counties may have come from the same source. Here now are the numbers as they stand. Let's give you those details. Embu County, where it all started, with the highest death toll tonight, standing at 24. In Makueni, the number so far is 18. 10 lives have been lost in Limuru. In Kiambu County, Murang'a County has the least, that death toll standing tonight at 2.
Now tonight on the big question, we are asking whether you think whether the chiefs are to blame for the illicit brew tragedy. Let's take a look at some of the comments that we are getting on our Twitter handles. Remember that you can get us on ktnkenya.tv. That is www.ktnkenya.tv. That is live, streaming live. Let's read some of your views here. Kenya Nemimi says, let's take another one from this one. It is sad that at this point, Sip of Death claims 60 plus lives and 7 die out of starvation. Who is in control?
Right, and here's another one from, you call yourself African Dudes. You say, so, if a guy dies of eating too much salt at his home, is that the chief's fault too? Some food for thought.
Edwin Mutabuku says, the moment unscrupulous officers will be shown the door is the time the Sip of Death menace will be history.
All right, keep your comments coming in. We'll sample them as we continue with this newscast.
It's now time for sports, and Nick Mudimba is in our sports studio tonight. Not Nick. Very sorry, Lynn, for that.
It's okay, Wilson.
I honestly thought that, Nick is around.
I know why. I think it's because, you share the same sorrows when it comes to Manchester United.
I wouldn't really call them sorrows.
But anyway, from Manchester United, we'll have more sports stories lined up for you. Do stay with us after a short break.
Well, let's give you the results of our big question tonight, and we are asking whether you think chiefs are to blame for the illicit brew tragedy. And here is how that question polled tonight. 67% of you say yes, the chiefs are to blame, and 33% of you say no.
A stinging indictment, especially because we heard that the county commissioner today sacked the chief and his assistant. Let's take a look at your thoughts tonight. Sadia, you say alcohol is not food, for heaven's sake. No one is to be blamed but yourself. After all, you had your cake and ate it alone.
Edwin Muthabuk once more says unemployment contributes to the Sip of Death. Being idle, they waste all their time in the dens.
Here's something that shouldn't be taken lightly. That's only ignorance. There's much that should be taken into consideration. Here's another one. Let me get that. Chiefs cannot act like prefects of standard twos. This is from Joseph Mbo. Addiction is poor parenting. Those are your thoughts tonight. Indeed, on a night when more than 60 people have died from drinking illicit brew, it's a really sad day in this country. Yeah.
And Patrick Nganga, just let me get this, the very last one here. Patrick Nganga says the society which it is the society which has failed to play its role.
Indeed, those are your views. Indeed, your views tonight. We thank you for watching. Do stay safe, and thanks for your feedback as well. My name is Yvonne Okwara. Have a good night.
I'm Wilson Guru. Enjoy the rest of your viewing. Good night.